and welcome to my biggest challenge ever, to find every single PlayStation 3 Platinum game released here in the PAL region, but with a twist. I'm going to find all of these games before the end of 2025, but that's not all. This year we finish what we started and finish the story, filling the gaps in both my PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 Platinum collections. This is my biggest challenge to date. This is the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy. Let the games begin. Hello and welcome to the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy, my biggest challenge ever. Before the end of 2025, I'm aiming to find every single PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 and now PlayStation 3 Platinum game released here in the PAL region. I'm taking you folks along for what promises to be an absolutely wild ride, and the ride starts right here, right now. You may be asking, why PlayStation Platinum games? This is a set of games which are universally hated, but for me they are beautiful. Yes, most people want the black label version of these games, but as a set, this is one of the most curated collections of PlayStation classics money can buy. You have a bit of everything: racing games, sports games, action games, adventure games, first-person shooters, all collected in the Platinum range. It surely is one of the greatest PlayStation collections money can buy. That's why I've made it my mission over the past few years to find every single PlayStation Platinum game released here in the PAL region, first for the PlayStation 1, then for the PlayStation 2, and now for the PlayStation 3, to complete the Platinum Trilogy and to have one of the greatest PlayStation collections known to mankind. And this is the final step of this 3-year trilogy. And trust me, it's going to be an absolutely crazy ride. Anything can happen. Buckle up, let's go. Now, all challenges have to start somewhere, but I wasn't expecting to find my first PlayStation 3 Platinum game here in my local recycling centre. It was disc only and it was Assassin's Creed, a very common Platinum, so I did decide to pass on this one. But somewhat ironically, this is where our challenge starts this week and also where it ends, but more on that later in the episode. There were 98 PlayStation 3 Platinum games released here in the PAL region. Now, of course, some of these games are rarer than others, and I was browsing Vinted when this first game for the collection came up, and this is a game which seems to be very, very rare. And as a wrestling fan, I knew I wanted to pick this game up sooner rather than later. And somewhat ironically, this is the 98th game on the list. This game is WWE 12, but it is the WrestleMania edition, and this is packed incredibly tightly. This was only a couple of quid on Vinted, but every collection has to start somewhere, and the Platinum Trilogy begins with WWE 12 WrestleMania edition. Now, you can see on the front here, this has a CEX sticker, but this is a very hard game to find, especially complete with the manual and, more importantly, with the Platinum disc. So very happy to cross this very first game off the list for the Platinum Trilogy. Over the past few years and through both the PlayStation Platinum Project and the Platinum Project PlayStation 2, I've been absolutely blown away and humbled by how many people have offered support for these series. And this series is starting with a bang. Recently I was invited by a good friend and fellow collector, Console77, to go to his games room to go through his car boot inventory, hunting for PlayStation 3 Platinum games. And this is an absolutely fantastic way, not just to catch up with a good friend, but to really kickstart the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy. I was lucky enough to be given the opportunity to dig through the inventory of reseller and fellow collector Console77. Now, more often than not, he is selling at Arming Hall Car Boot, but of course, we are on the off season at the moment. He is building up his inventory ready for the summer car boot season. And again, quite ironically, the first game we managed to find for the Platinum Trilogy was Assassin's Creed. Like I said at the start of this episode, it is one of the most common Platinum games, but it's good to get it crossed off the list complete with the Platinum disc and the manual, because that's what we're looking for, to find these games CIB. Now, Console77 isn't just a reseller, he's also a collector first, and he has not one but two of the most amazing games rooms I've ever seen. I have been lucky enough to have a full tour of both of his games rooms in a recent episode of Meet the Collector, and I'll link that full episode in the description down below. It is well worth checking out, as he has one of the most varied collections I've ever seen. Literally from Atari to Xbox, he has everything. Here we are then, back in my games room from not one but two of Console77's games rooms, and we have not one but two PlayStation 3 Platinum games to cross off the list, and it didn't take very long to find this one. We have Assassin's Creed, the very first PlayStation 3 Platinum game we found out in the wild, which was of course disc only, but now we have it complete with the manual in the box, of course with the Platinum disc. And the other game we picked up is an absolute banger, Final Fantasy 13, once again complete with the disc and manual. Now I am trying to the best of my abilities to find these games complete, but they must have the Platinum disc. So two more crossed off the list. The hunt continues. As I said at the start of this episode, we are not only trying to find every single PlayStation 3 Platinum game released here in the PAL region, we are trying to finish the story and find the remaining PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 Platinum games which I need to complete my collection. And in here is a game which I jumped on eBay to fill one of the gaps in our PlayStation 2 Platinum library. This was a game that we got very close to finding at the very final stop of the Platinum Project PlayStation 2. I had a copy of this game in my hands, but I opened it up and it didn't have the correct Platinum disc. But I said we are finishing the story this year. I jumped on eBay and bought this copy of F105. This is the French version of this game, and to the best of my knowledge, this game was only released under the Platinum label in France. Now, sadly, this does not have the manual, but it does have the Platinum disc. And it's just one step closer to completing the Platinum Project PlayStation 2. At the end of the Platinum Project PlayStation 2, we had 34 PlayStation 2 PAL games left to find. So with F105, that takes us down to 33 games remaining. But let's get that number down even more with this game right here. Now, this is a game which I never knew had a PlayStation 2 Platinum release. My list of 256 games, which made up the Platinum Project PlayStation 2, was a list to the best of my knowledge of every PlayStation 2 Platinum game released here in the PAL region. But there was the unlucky 13 games which I never knew had a PlayStation 2 Platinum release, and this is one of those games. This is Kung Fu Panda, a game which did get a UK PAL Platinum release, but one I'd never seen before. It was only when I managed to get some inside knowledge about the PlayStation Platinum collection I was able to realise I was missing this game, but I'm missing it no longer. Disc, manual, it's another one to cross off the list. We have one final PlayStation 2 Platinum game to cross off the list this time, and this is a tough one to find. This is a game which has eluded me once. I had this in my basket on eBay and someone bought it before me, but this time I went hanging around. As soon as I found this game, I grabbed it. This is Splinter Cell Double Agent. To the best of my knowledge, this game was only released in France. This is a very rare PlayStation 2 Platinum game, and I was very happy to find this one a second time on eBay, and a very heavy hitter to cross off the list for the Platinum Project PlayStation 2 and move one step closer to completing the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy. With 3 more PlayStation 2 Platinum games crossed off the list, let's get back on the hunt for PlayStation 3 Platinum games. And what better place to hunt than at one of the absolutely amazing independent gaming stores we have here in the UK. What better place to start the Platinum Trilogy than Last Level Games, my favourite local independent gaming store here in the fine city of Norwich. I have lost track of how many amazing games I've picked up here over the years, but we're starting off with a very common title, one I'm very happy to cross off the list, because honestly, if the Platinum Project PlayStation 2, and indeed the PlayStation Platinum Project, are anything to go by, it is sports games like this which are good to get crossed off the list early, because there are so many sports games on this list, and I just want to get them crossed off the list as quick as possible, as it took an embarrassingly long time to find every FIFA game for the Platinum Project PlayStation 2, and some of those were incredibly hard to find. But as always, there's an absolutely incredible selection of PlayStation 3 games here at Last Level Games, including a lot of Platinum games. And the best thing about hunting at Last Level Games, all of these games were in absolutely incredible condition. The cases were clean, they were complete, and honestly, pretty much minty. It was a fantastic way to start the Platinum Trilogy. As a bit of a comparison, here is a pawn shop next door to Last Level Games. And yes, they had a very large selection of Platinum games, but a lot of these were missing the Platinum discs or the manual, or were just very, very overpriced, like £5 for Resistance Fall of Man. In that condition is absolutely ridiculous, and it goes to show, do not take your local independent gaming store for granted. You have to support them, especially in difficult economic times like this. And this is why, over the course of this series, I'm going to try and shine a spotlight on as many of the amazing independent gaming stores we have in the UK as possible. This is the first of many. Here we are then, back in the games room after visiting Last Level Games, the first of many independent gaming stores we'll be visiting over the course of the Platinum Trilogy. We have a trilogy of PlayStation 3 Platinum games to cross off the list from Last Level Games, starting off at the bargain price of 50p PES 2010. Like I said, there is a shockingly large number of sports games on this list, and I'll be very happy to get these crossed off the list as soon as possible. Next up, we have an absolute banger, a game I'm so excited to play. Again, Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction, once again for just £4. There are so many good, cheap PlayStation 3 Platinum games, and honestly, this could be one of the best value for money games on this list. And finally, we have quite possibly the most iconic PlayStation 3 game ever released. Comment down below what you believe is the most iconic PlayStation 3 game ever released. I think it could be Uncharted Drake's Fortune, once again for the absolutely banging price of £1.50. This is something I love about the Platinum Trilogy. I have picked up so many amazing games for bargain prices because so many people do not want the Platinum versions of these games. It goes to show game hunting doesn't always have to be expensive. Over the past few years of the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy, I've been blown away by the support and generosity of the retro gaming community, not just here in the UK, but all around the world. And we're starting off with another donation for the collection from a good friend and fellow gamer who you will see over on Twitch, twitch.tv/DanTheGamesMan Twitch, often playing Helldivers with me, my good friend Dan, who on a recent trip to another incredible independent gaming store and toy store here in the fine city of Norwich, Sutton Toys, found this game, Colin McRae Dirt 2. An absolutely incredible racing game, an absolutely fantastic game to cross off the list. So massive thanks to Dan for this one, and I think a trip to Sutton Toys is definitely on the cards very soon. We're on to our final stop, this time on the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy, and of course, no game hunt would be complete without a trip to a CEX store, and what better place to start this time than my local CEX store here in the fine city of Norwich. There are hundreds of CEX stores all around the UK and indeed the world, but this is my local one here in the fine city of Norwich, and what better place to round off our first Platinum hunt for the Platinum Trilogy. Now, of course, there is a slight issue when you are hunting for Platinum games in CEX. There is no way to check on the CEX app if they have Platinum games in store. You have to just go in, roll a dice, and cross your fingers you will find Platinum games. But finding them is only half the battle. When you take the games up to the counter, you then have to find out if they have the correct Platinum disc. And throughout the Platinum Project PlayStation 2, I found that more often than not, they may not have the correct disc, and it can be very, very annoying. But hopefully, this early in the Platinum Trilogy, we can find a large amount of games to cross off the list and really kickstart this collection. So far, so good. We are finding plenty of Platinum games which we need for the Platinum Trilogy, and at the start of projects like this, it is great fun. You are finding loads and loads of games and also crossing loads of cheap bangers off the list. But of course, it only gets harder from here. At the start of the Platinum Trilogy, I'm expecting we're going to find a large number of games. And the further and further we get into this challenge, I think it's going to be harder and harder to find the rarer and more obscure games. But let's just celebrate the good times here at Norwich CX. We are building up a veritable stack of PlayStation 3 Platinum games. But of course, how many of these games will come complete with the correct Platinum disc? Only time will tell. But we are off to a flying start here with the Platinum Trilogy, the final part of a 3-year challenge to find every single PlayStation Platinum game. Now, all around the country and indeed the world, I believe that PlayStation 3 sections are shrinking. It'll be very interesting to see over the course of the Platinum Trilogy what happens to the state of PlayStation 3 collecting here at CEX. I just think these sections are getting smaller and smaller, and a lot of these games are the cheapest they're ever going to be at the moment. I don't think there's ever been a better time to collect, not just for the PlayStation 3, but for PlayStation 3 Platinum games. It'll be very interesting to see what happens to the state of PlayStation 3 collecting over the course of 2025. But today, all is good. We have managed to find tons of Platinum games we need for the Platinum Trilogy, but we need to take these up to the counter and find out how many came complete with the Platinum disc. Let's take it back to the games room and have a count up. But first things first, what better way to celebrate the very first episode of the Platinum Trilogy than with a delicious chippy dinner. But we have one more stop on the way back to the games room, my local recycling centre, where this series started and where this first episode is ending, as I managed to stumble across an incredible PlayStation 3 Platinum find and a great way to round off this first episode. Here we are then, back in the games room after our first PlayStation 3 Platinum hunt at CX right here in the fine city of Norwich. Now, of course, when you are hunting for PlayStation Platinum games at CX, you have no guarantee you are going to get the Platinum disc. Now, this is nothing against my local CX store. This is the same for every CX store I've ever visited. And this time we took 6 PlayStation 3 Platinum games up to the counter and we came away with 2. The first of which is Assassin's Creed Revelations for just £1, an absolute bargain. It does come complete with the Platinum disc and manual. And the second game we picked up is one of my favourite co-op multiplayer games of all time. I spent countless hours playing this one on co-op online on the Xbox 360. It is Saints Row 2 for just £2, an absolutely fantastic game, which is of course complete with the manual. And thus, that was our first trip to CX Platinum hunting here for the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy. Here we are then at the end of the first episode of the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy, and somewhat ironically, this episode ends where it first began, at my local recycling centre. And what an amazing way to close off this first episode, to find this box-only PlayStation 3 Platinum console. Now, there was no official PlayStation 3 Platinum console, but I think this is as close as it gets. And if nothing else, this is an amazing omen that this series is going to be absolutely incredible. We have a few pieces of business to address before the end of this first episode of the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy. Now, this series has always been about not just collecting games, but also playing games. But this series, we are doing things a little bit differently. I will be jumping over on Twitch, twitch.tv/DannyGamesMan Twitch this week and playing our very first PlayStation 3 Platinum game from this episode. So go over to Twitch, hit that follow button and join me for my first PlayStation 3 Platinum playthrough this week. But we have one more thing to do before the end of this episode. It is draw the winner of this massive selection of PlayStation 2 Platinum games. Throughout the PlayStation Platinum project, I managed to amass a massive selection of doubles. And as my way of giving back to you viewers and everyone who's helped me along the way on the Platinum Project PlayStation 2, we are giving these away to one lucky person who commented on the finale of the PlayStation Platinum project. And I have all of the comments listed up here on this random comment picker. And we're now going to pick a winner. So good luck to everyone. Fingers crossed. And let's do the draw. So the winner is... Here we go. Loading up the comments, picking a winner now. The winner is Dougie McBain, who said, I absolutely love these challenges. Such a good series. So congratulations to Dougie. This massive box of PlayStation 2 Platinum games will be winging its way to you very, very soon. So hit me up on my socials, and I look forward to passing the torch, and hopefully you'll be able to complete the Platinum Project PlayStation 2. There we have it, folks. That was the very first episode of the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy, the beginning of the end. By the end of 2025, we will have found not only every single PlayStation 3 Platinum game released here in the PAL region, but we will finish the story and find the remaining PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games we need to complete the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy. But for today, we are starting off strong with 9 PlayStation 3 games to cross off the list, but that's not all. We also have 3 PlayStation 2 games taking us one step closer to completing the Platinum Trilogy. There we have it then, folks, the beginning of the end, the very first episode of the PlayStation Platinum Trilogy, and trust me, you ain't going to want to miss a minute of this absolutely crazy year. If the previous 2 years of this challenge have been anything to go by, trust me, anything can happen. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and until next time, let the games begin. See y'all soon!